So this review is going to be a little different to most. I'm going to start off by showing you how good the card I've chosen is. Then, afterwards, I'll tell you what it is. This way you can evaluate the card without your AMD or Nvidia hat on, because the last thing I would want is your bias to your brand changing your view on the performance of the card. Hallelujah. After coming back from the computer shop, $150 poorer, I now have to remove my beloved Radeon from our test PC. After installing the card, we jumped into Far Cry 3. With all the settings turned up to the very high preset, we got a frame rate as high as 60 FPS and as low as 39, mainly hovering around 48 FPS, which, as you can see here, is perfectly playable. Crysis 2 is a game known for bringing graphics cards to their knees, but with the settings set one below the maximum on the extreme preset, the card managed to pump out a maximum of 81 FPS and a low of 38, staying around a smooth 55 frames per second for most of the time. Bioshock Infinite ran beautifully on the card at the Ultra preset, with the frame rate staying around a very smooth 64 FPS, hitting a maximum of 113 FPS and 37 at its worst. I adore this game because of its unique and sharp aesthetic style, and the recent opportunity to see Rapture before it turned to Anarchy through the Beyond the Sea expansion was just excellent. Left 4 Dead 2 is an older game that I still play on a regular basis, and the card did not disappoint in terms of performance here, pushing 270 frames per second at its best and 103 at its worst, mostly staying around 166, all on the maximum settings, which is very impressive. Killing Floor is another one of my favorite zombie shooters, and the card ran it with ease, even with the settings maxed out, hitting a maximum of 470 frames per second and 105 at its lowest, mostly staying around 171 FPS for a majority of the time. Sleeping Dogs at the very high preset showed a maximum of 63 frames per second, but mostly stayed around 55 and dropped to 48 at the worst. The last benchmark for this little powerhouse was the Counter-Strike Source video stress test. Now, this isn't a particularly stressful game, but for those of you who play a lot of CS, you know very smooth frame rates are paramount to your success throughout the game. And the card didn't disappoint, pushing 301 frames per second at its highest and staying around 295 frames per second for most of the time. It's incredible that $150 can get you this much performance, considering that most $100 cards couldn't come close to these frame rates. So what is this little mystery powerhouse? It's an ATI Rage Pro 128. Did I get you? No. It's a GeForce GTX 750 with 2GB of GDDR memory. This card was simply unbeatable for the price, and the AMD equivalent that would outperform it was $10 more, making this literally the best card you can get for $150. The numbers speak for themselves, and this is hard to say coming from a hardcore AMD Radeon guy. Hallelujah. But I am very impressed with this little card. Though one of the card's best features is actually something that most people wouldn't even think about. Tell me, can you see a 6-pin power connector anywhere here? Well, you are right if you guessed none, as this card runs entirely off the motherboard power. This means you can slip it into an old machine like this and turn it into a low-end gaming machine without having to upgrade the power supply whatsoever. I once walked into a computer shop looking for a new GPU for one of these Dells, and when I told them the power supply was 305 watts, they all laughed and slid a $40 HD 5450 across the table. Well, computer shop jerks, this card runs just fine on 300 watts, so suck on that. Anyway, if you are looking for a kick-ass little card for less than $150, I can totally recommend the GTX 750, as its power requirements aren't even a concern, and it will run these modern games at close to HD resolutions on very high settings without a problem. Though if you have a little more money to spend, I recommend taking a look at the Radeon R7 260X, as it is just $10 more. Or if you really want to max out your games at 1080p resolution, then you should definitely check out the Radeon R9 270X for an extra $120, as this card literally cannot be beaten on value. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions or queries down below, and do subscribe if you like this kind of content. And have a good day.